find a political attitude to keep on stage for their demand of their democratic rights. According to the new political circumstances and influences about the membership aims to the European Union, many minority groups in Turkey began to discover new aspects regarding their identity. For the Alevis, the massacre of 33 Alevi intellectuals in the Anatolian province Sivas in 1993 appeared as a catalytic converter to start discussions about their religious and cultural identity beyond political ones. Within time, this population realized and that there was a lack of clear definition of the religious aspects of Alevism, but the heterogeneous character, like regarding their language, ethnicity, political views, due to the existence of different forms of Alevism, launched additional challenger to them. It is important to emphasize that there are lots of different groups which are many times subtitled and counted amongst the Alevis, living in the Balkan region, the Middle Eastern, and different parts of Asia. However, they distinguish themselves from each other on a variety of different points. The Anatolian Alevis are different from the Nusayri, for example, who are also called the Arab Alevis, and also from the Jaferi, for instance, who have a big community in Turkey, in Istanbul, for example, and who are also counted as the Imamids, the 12 Imamids. And both of these groups, for example, Jaferis and the Nusayris, they are completely different from the Anatolian Alevis, even though they are counted as Alevis in the public sphere. The demand of some Alevis circles in the European diaspora to be accepted as somehow a further confession within the Islam did institutionalize the division of the Anatolian Alevi community to two main drafts, like the pro-Islam and contra-Islam drafts. This happened to be the case in Austria. Nowadays, one draft is treated within the new Islam Act 2015 by the Austrian authorities, thanks to the efforts of the Islam Alevi Religious Society, which is officially recognized as a religious society in Austria. Not all the Alevis are conform with these developments, and those Alevis, and mostly Eastern Anatolian Alevis, they are organized within the Confederation of the Alevi Associations in Europe and the Democratic Alevi Federation, FEDA, which is known for its critical and rejective position to Kemalism, the Turkish dominance within the Anatolian Alevism, and its closeness to the Kurdish movement. Due to their non-Sunni identity, the Alevis have been facing discrimination for centuries, but the Alevis who additionally belong to for example, non-Turkish identities face multiple exclusions and disadvantages in the republic that is characterized by the Turkish and Sunni Islam synthesis. The few literature sources that are existing about the orally transmitted faith are dominated by political interests about reducing and assimilating Alevism to a kind of Turkish Sunni Islam culture. The heterogeneous character of Alevism regarding the variable ethnicity has been ignored for a very long time. This contribution emphasizes the special future of the Alevis and Alevism from and in former Dersim, which is a historical region in Eastern Anatolia and generally accepted as the stronghold of the Eastern Anatolian Alevis. The Dersim population is almost entirely of Alevi origin, including particular elements of a former natural faith. The affiliation of the Dersim Alevis to the nature and the maintenance of the pantheistic or pagan elements of Alevism and former natural faith which is in deep connection to the space, as if time has never passed, is a distinctive typology of the Alevism in that region. If in Eastern Anatolia, in particular in Dersim and in Erzincan, for example, the people say, I am Kurmanj, they mean that they are Alevi, and there is no direct connection to the word Kurmanj, which points to the northern Kurdish ethnicity. Alevis from Erzurum and Varta, for example, call themselves Sharema, which is our people or people from us, while the Kurmanji-speaking Alevis from Sivas, for example, call themselves Zaza, to put a clear distinction to the Sunni Kurds in their surroundings. Beside of the stronger Shia Islamic influence amongst the Eastern Anatolian Alevis regarding the historical point of contact to the Persian Empire, strong maintenance of the pantheistic systems can be discovered above all within the Kurmanj. The Battle of Chaldiran 1514 between the Ottoman Empire and the Persian Empire, which ended with the victory of the Sunna-oriented Ottoman Empire, was the historic breaking point for the Anatolian Alevis, determining that they would become Shiite. Due to a balance, or moreover, a clear demarcation to the more and more Sunna-ruled Ottoman Empire, Shah Ismail established the other Orthodox draft in Islam, the Shiitism, as the state religion in Persia. Although Shah Ismail was pretty much grown up and socialized within the Alevi Kızılbaş rite, due to its non-hierarchic and few institutionalized and non-Orthodox character, it does not seem to be ruled a big imperium with an Anatolian Alevism. There is a big discussion regarding the ethnic background of the Dersim population due to the strong and engrossing Kurdish movement, due to the fact that the biggest part of the Dersimis do have Zazaki as their first language, and also according to the outcomes of the first Zazaki conference in Vienna 2015, the linguists agree that the membership to a nationality is one's political decision and does not implicitly contain direct connection to the first language or mother tongue one speaks. The Anatolian Alevis did experience strong repressions through the Ottoman Empire, above all within the 15th and 16th century. According to the attitudes against the Ottoman repression and the social-political context, big distinctions regarding the social-political positions between the Western and Eastern Anatolian Alevis can be marked. Within the Turkish Republic and growing left-wing political movement in the 1970s, above all, Dersim was described as the locality of people who were defined by 3 Ks, means communist, Kızılbaş, and Kurd. After the eminent influence of the Turkish socialist movement within the 1970s in Dersim, the Kurdish movement caused an important impact in the region. Above all, the generation born in the 1990s shows stronger sympathy to the Kurdish movement. According to the fact that the biggest part of the Kurds belong to the Shafi Sunna rite of the Islam, the fear of the Dersima population about discrimination and violence by the Kurds is upright. The opinion, if the Kurds have had the chance, they would kill us, is dominant amongst the elderly Dersim population. They point to the solidarity of the Kurdish clans with the Ottomans in the battle in Chaldiran, and the absence of Kurdish support during the Dersim and the other Alevi genocides, for example, plus the conflict zones between the Alevism and Sunna Islam et al. The same standpoint can be observed for the case of the Sunna Zaza speaking people. From the second half of the 1990s and above all, with the beginning of the 21st century on, a stronger return to the Alevi faith and the Zaza language occurred to socio-political developments regarding that region. But again, Dersim does function as one of the important operational fields of the war between the Kurdish movement and the Turkish government. Plus, this region is threatened by the establishment of hydroelectric dam projects again of the Turkish government. Those dams do destroy the pilgrimages of the Alevis and thereby connectedly the culture, faith and lifestyle of the Kurmanj. Due to different assimilation politics of the Ottoman Empire and the Turkish Republic, and in the face of the strong Kurdish movement, Kurmanj seemed to have missed 3 points at least. The possibility of keeping alive their mother tongue, the possibility of clearly define and live Alevism, and the clear definition of the ethnical affiliation. May I ask for a couple of minutes to, if this is okay for you, to finish my, yes, but I think maybe 5 minutes is not enough, okay. The Zazaki speakers have missed to develop a non-ethnic identity, but more and more Zazaki speakers point to their difference to the Kurdish and Kurds at all. The biggest part of the Alevi Zaza speakers do not really seem aware about or interested in their ethnic or their identity regarding their language, but prefer to hold on their Eastern Alevi ethnic identity. So maybe the focus on the religious identity could work as a catalytic impact on the development of the language identity. Now I would like to make a cut to put some information according to the Arab Alevi diaspora. The more democratic circumstances in Europe made it possible to the Alevis to live and develop their identity, which has been oppressed and threatened in the homeland Turkey. Within their migrant existence, the Alevi established their associations to practice their faith and get socialized with each other. The position of Alevism to Islam started to be intensively discussed, above all due to the official recognition demands of the Alevi associations within the Western European diaspora. The influence, the relevance, and meaning of the Islam within the Alevism still causes many question marks in the heads. In a Sunnah-dominated Turkey, the distance or the closeness to Islam has never been discussed that strong like this happens in the European diaspora for some years by now. A definition and fulfillment of the content of Alevism without the use of the principles of Islam seems not possible nowadays. In general, the achievements of the European Alevi diaspora imply positive and motivating effects on the Alevi stakeholders in Turkey to demand their democratic rights. In the same time, the discussion about the question whether Alevism belongs to Islam or not, which dominates the European Anatolian Alevis' daily routine, appears suspect and alarming to the Alevis in Turkey. The Anatolian Alevis had a somehow critical position to the Orthodox Islam of the Ottoman Empire, but they didn't really question their own position to Islam. To the contrary, the more they were harassed as disbeliever within a Sunnah-dominated empire, the more they somehow searched for protection in an Islam that was represented by the Persian Imperium then. To show just one example regarding the relation between the diaspora and the homeland, and then I would like to come to my conclusion points. Since the increasing power of the Turkish government party, AKP, step cuts to hinder a clear democratization process in Turkey, a more obvious positioning to the Kurdish issue and the pro-Kurdish Democratic People's Party, HDP, above all within the rows of the Eastern Anatolian Alevis can be observed. An important development to determine the positions of the European Anatolian Alevis stakeholders to the Anatolian Alevi stakeholders in Turkey happened when the president of the Confederation of the Alevi Associations in Europe, Turgut Öker, declared his candidacy for independent deputy in the parliament elections of 2011 in Turkey. The Alevis in Turkey didn't welcome this step and once again supported the Republican People's Party, CHP, to force a balance against the AKP. So this was an attitude according to the political circumstances and context in Turkey. Now, for conclusion, the situation of the Alevis and the Alevism is not to indicate without analyzing the attitudes and survival strategies which are sometimes seen as opportunistic. According to the political circumstances and developments, the Alevis take in particular positions. The CHP always seemed as a protector to them to prevent the takeover of Islamic power in Turkey. Currently, the HDP seems to promise for a better life in Turkey, for democracy, for equality. On the one side, because the question about the relationship of Alevism and Islam is not clear until yet, this polemic seems to be further continued. No Alevi stakeholder is able to answer the question, who is an Alevi and what is Alevism? But the response is full of information about the massacre and harassment of Alevis and Alevism in Turkey, the common historical trauma memories, the inequality and disadvantaged position under the Sunna Islam members within the Turkish Republic. And this is my last PPP. As long as an Alevism that is an independent belief system by its own apart from Islam cannot be defined and determined scientifically, a subordination and assimilation to the Islam seems to be inevitable in long term. The existing Alevi associations mainly practice cultural and social activities, plus, because the mandatory positions within the Alevi associations, the Alevi stakeholders and leaders, are taken by former activists of the Turkish socialist movement of the 1970s, the Alevi movement is not able to develop new visions for future and keep looking to the past and their political practices in the past. More than before, it seems important that democratic Alevi stakeholders manage to define a common denominator to focus on humanist and key values of Alevism, namely peace and equality, pacifism, again. Besides of the regularly performed commemoration rituals of the Alevi Association on the one side and their solidarity actions with the oppressed groups in Turkey and the other side, it is time to establish a clear vision and perspective to an Alevism that is clearly defined without external aspirations and is clear in its purposes and does not worry about new massacres and assimilation. And my last sentence, these points can be reached when a self-confidence and belief to its own visions and aims can be established, and maybe it is possible to discuss then about, this was my last PPP, yes. We can discuss about this. I just want to make an, just 1 minute. Two main pillars are to be focused on in this process by a clear definition of Alevism. One is the theological dimension and the political dimension. And for the Zaza Alevis, according to Zaza nation state building, etc., we have internal dimension, we have an external dimension. For the internal dimension, the socio-economic, the material capital, the political power and military power is to be questioned. And for the external dimension, nation-building processes in the 21st century, what about this, and about questions and discussions about alternatives can be searched for, and Alevis could be initiators for democracy and peacemaking processes after this, when these levels are finished or focused on. Thank you.